No, don't worry about it. Here we go.
I'm on
Okay.
YouTube already.
Guys, I need you to check your answers. These should be pretty routine. Anthony, Anna, you heading the game here? Last night's homework answers. Take a look. We will get to the quiz after we're done going over the homework answers. I just don't want to have to switch back and forth multiple times. So, I'll get to the door in a couple of minutes. Calm down, Nolan.
That is
Okay.
now on YouTube.
Listen, guys, if you're going to be real distracted, it seems to me that some of you making the noise are people who are most worried about their quizzes. And the more noise you make, the less work we're going to get through. All right, so any questions on these answers up on the board? Okay. I'm particularly interested in like questions C through F up at the top there, because I think we didn't spend as much time on laws of exponents as we normally do, and I'm depending on the fact that we keep coming back and spiraling to these several times to make sure the point is gotten. Any questions on C through F? Okay. A couple of box method questions. Okay. Double distribute. You know, knowing the difference between the two and when to use them. Some people call double distribute FOIL. It's the same exact thing. If they call it FOIL, it'll be like an acronym. Capital F, capital O, capital I, capital L. First outers and there's last. I hate it. I hate it with a passion. I just want to mention that it's up there. No, I passionately hate FOIL. So it's a gimmick, and I hate gimmicks. Math should be presented for the logical consistency and the truth therein, not as some series of gimmicks for kids to go, oh, God, what do I got to know this for? Okay. Now, my big concerns are that you can do the questions on 11, A through E, and then the parts in A through E, 1 through 4. Okay? Yesterday we talked about this in class. Negative exponent.
Reciprocal.
Very good. So, it says 5 to the negative 3. Notice the answer has nothing to do with a negative sign. And it's such an instinct on the part of students to want to put a negative sign in the answer, and it has nothing to do with it. So negative exponents, ladies, never, ever, ever mean to put a negative in there. It means reciprocal. So it's 1 over 5 to the third, which is 1 over 125. 7 to the negative 3 is 1 over 7 to the positive 3. Notice the reciprocal again, which is 1 over 343. Letter C puts them all together with a function here. It says evaluate h of 3 if h of x is 3x to the 0 plus x to the negative 2. So the input is 3. I plug it in. 3 to the 0 is 1. 3 times 1 is 3. And 3 to the negative 2 is 1 over 3 to the positive 2, which is 9. So altogether I get 3 and a ninth. Negative exponent, and now it wants it, the directions say to express it using a positive exponent. So that's 1 over v to the fourth. The next one is 7 over n squared, because this negative exponent does not refer to the 7. It only refers to the n. So the 7 stays, the 7 is not made a reciprocal, if you will, and not reciprocated. Now, number 3 is important because we said reciprocal, yet in all the prior examples, it's been 1 over. But if I get a fraction like 2/3, the reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. So that's why I put 3/2 there to the third power. And then this one will be x over 3 to the fourth power. Okay? Any questions? All right, so there's your homework answers. And hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of clarity. Now, as far as the quiz goes, the quiz was on in Word, so let me pop up Word here. First, the equation, which obviously didn't get copied through correctly. That's because of different editions of Word here. So what I want to do is go through this equation, and let's make clear that there are 2 different ways to do this. One is the blood and guts approach. That's what we're teaching you now. Another one is a much cleaner way to do it. But the blood and guts approach always works, and some students stumble on the cleaner way to do it, where you use the least common denominator, because it's weird how you do it compared to what you've been doing your whole life. So I want to teach the blood and guts approach in case you struggle with the other approach. And this approach should be something that, because you're allowed to use your calculator, is really easy to do. So every person in the room should be able to get this right because of the calculator. If it wasn't for the calculator, there would be much to do. Can you guys just scoot back a bit, please? So, it says 3/5 times x minus 1 plus x over 4 equals 3 minus 2/5 x. Look, guys, I don't care that this is 3/5 x in front. If this was a 4 in front, you would distribute the 4. Now it's a 3/5 in front, so I'm going to distribute the 3/5. So I get 3/5 x minus 3/5 plus x over 4 equals 3 minus 2/5 x. So all I do for my first step is to distribute that 3/5. Yet I looked at some of your papers, and I saw some papers where they didn't distribute. That should be automatic. You don't even think about it. Now, next, like terms. This is a same side, same operation situation where we're at right now. So I have to add 3/5 x and 1/4 x. Remember, there's really a 1 in front here. Now, ordinarily, I would say that for some kids that could cause difficulty because kids aren't always in love with fractions. But this is not difficult when you have a graphing calculator. Parenthesis 3 divided by 5, parenthesis, plus parenthesis 1 divided by 4, parenthesis. When you do that, I believe it's going to come out to 0.85, right? Let's see, that would be 4 would be 12. Yeah, it would come out to 0.85. But then you have to do math enter enter. And when you do math enter enter, it'll come out to 17 over 20. X minus 3/5 equals 3 minus 2/5. And then I think at that point, Nolan, I think we add the 2/5 x to both sides. And that's where you get what you were talking about. I think you were a step ahead. So this would become 25 over 20x. And in your calculator, it would actually reduce that to 5/4 x. Okay? And then I'm going to add 3/5 to both sides. I don't know why my pen stopped writing all of a sudden. 3/5. And that would give me equals 3 and 3/5. Now, a couple of different ways to do this. I could just take 3 and 3/5, or I could convert it to 18 over 5, and that's going to equal 5/4 x. And then I'm going to just divide by 5/4. That's a good way to do it. There's a whole bunch of different ways to add that. And if I do in the calculator, 18 divided by 5, of course, in parentheses, divided by, in parentheses, 5 divided by 4, your calculator will come out with, I think it's 2.88, but if you go math enter enter again, it comes out with 72 over 20. Okay? So again, it's tedious, and that's why I call it the blood and guts approach. There's nothing clean about it. There's nothing like, wow, that was pretty slick. Nobody feels that way. You just go through it step by step as if it was a regular number, but every time you get into, where you would normally use an integral value, now you're using a fractional value, and you have to pause on the calculator and do parentheses number divided by number parentheses. And then you have to remember to convert back is always a matter of math enter. Okay, any questions? By the way, Eric, did you happen to notice how many wins the Islanders have? How many?
Yes.
How many do the Islanders have?
4.
Good. Did you happen to notice how many wins the Rangers have?
Yes.
How many?
4.
Just saying. No particular reason I'm bringing that up. Just saying. When the Rangers had only 1 win and whatever 3 losses, and I said, don't even worry about it. It's early in the year. Okay, now, what we have here, there's this old movie called Cool Hand Luke. And in this movie, Cool Hand Luke, there's a very famous line in that movie. Coach Friend loves this line. Coach Friend is great with memorizing lines from movies.
He does.
He's really great with it. And in that line, it says, or in that movie, it says, what we have here is a failure to communicate. Maybe your parents have said that to you once or twice in your life.
Coach Bennett said that to
He
me
says like you're a
at
failed
baseball.
abortion to us.
No, I said that.
All right,
No,
stop.
that's what he
Stop. What we have is a failure to communicate. Listen, first off, most people subtracted here. I think one person actually multiplied this by this. I realize they're talking about area here, but if you look at the directions, what does it say? Find the difference. What does difference mean? Subtract. Now, here's the important point to remember. When you subtract, listen very carefully, because Lily, if you lose track of this, you're gonna really hurt yourself on the Regents. A few years ago, they started putting questions like this on the Math 8 assessment. And it wasn't bad that they put questions like this. I think the question is perfectly fair. But when they told us how to grade this, Nolan, stay with me on this, right, Ash? When they told us how to grade it, this is what they said. The answer to this question, by the way, I think is gonna be 3n squared minus 9n minus 8. And the first year this question came out, my kids took the test, and I had taught them a slightly different way to do it than I'm about to show you now. One where you use your head more and a little less writing. And they would, instead of getting 3n squared minus 8n minus 8, or minus 9n minus 8, maybe they made a mistake like 3n squared minus 8n minus 8. Or plus 8 at the end. And what the bottom line is, out of the trinomial, they were getting 2 out of 3 parts correct. So it was pretty obvious that they were doing something right. And the state said give them 0 points, even though it was a 3-point question. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And the state came out, and this is how they said they want a question like this graded. And nowadays, by the way, the state gives us a manual about this thick on how to grade the test. And they say, if you see this, give this many points. If you see this, give this many points. If you see this, give this many points. The reason they do that is they try to make all school districts give the same grading standard so that you can compare the results between schools. It doesn't always work out, but that's what they want us to do.
So they can see which school's best?
No, so that when they compare all of the teachers, the way they grade a teacher nowadays is this. They take every kid in New York State and they put them in a bucket. Let's say they get all the kids who score on their state assessment test, like you guys took the 7th grade test last year. Let's say that you scored, anybody who scored between 0 and 200 goes in a bucket, then 201 to 400 in a bucket, 401 to 500 in a bucket, or whatever the principles are. And then they look at how much each of the students in each of the buckets improves. So their problem is, if what we grade as improvement is different than what another district grades as improvement, then how can you compare how the kids are doing? And if you can't compare how the kids are doing, how can you compare how the teachers are doing? So that's what they do. Now, the first area is 4n squared minus 3n plus 1. And now you're going to have to subtract, because it's difference, n squared plus 6n plus 9. So the first thing the state wants to see is that written down somewhere. You don't need parentheses around the first one, but you do around the second one. So somewhere on your paper, that should be written down, okay? That shows that you're subtracting the whole quantity. Now, what I noticed is that a lot of you guys like to write this vertically. And you'll put this over this. If you write it vertically, you still have to do the minus in the parentheses. Here's the big step. This I did used to teach my students to do. Then I would teach them to do this. I would say, okay, students, do 4n squared minus 1n squared, that's 3n squared. Do negative 3n minus 6n, that's negative 9. And do 1 minus 9, that's negative 8. And I would tell them to do that. And that's when they would get 2 out of 3 parts right. Some people got it all right, and they would get full credit. But if you got any part wrong, they were giving you 0 points unless you did this. They want you to show the step where you change every sign in the second set of parentheses. So the state wants this. This is a positive n squared, it becomes negative. What is this?
Negative
Positive.
6.
Positive 6 now, so it's going to become.
Negative 6n.
And this is a,
Positive 9.
so it becomes a,
Negative 9.
they want this line in there. Now, I don't care if you write it vertically, where you take these guys and slide them underneath, and I don't care if you write it horizontally. I'm kind of into writing it horizontally because eventually you're going to be using it in equations, and nobody puts it vertically in equations. But whatever floats your boat. Now you combine like terms. 3n squared minus 9n minus 8. Now the kicker was this. If you showed this work and got the same answer that my kid got, and my kid got 0 points out of 3, but you showed this step and came up with the same answer my kid got, you got 2 out of 3. So they took points off for doing it in your head. So you need to show that step. Now I talked about this yesterday with what to show, and yet today there were several people in each of the classes who did not show that step. So let's be aware and make sure that we show that step for tomorrow. If you didn't show that step, it costs you 30 points if you got it wrong. So if you show it tomorrow and you get it right, and that alone adds 30 points to your score. And anybody who had a disappointing grade pretty much did that. All right, so the last one is to use an area diagram to show the product. I'm going to put it up at the top here because it's a little easier to see. 4x squared plus 9x minus 5, or minus 3, I'm sorry. And then 3x minus 5. All right, the big thing we mentioned yesterday with this is that kids who make mistakes on this kind of problem fail to put the plus and minus signs in each of the boxes. 3x times 4x squared is 12x to the third. 3x times positive 9x is plus 27x. And 3x times negative 3 minus 9x. Now, doing the next row, negative 20x squared minus 45x plus 15. Now, once you have all of those values filled in there, it's a matter of adding on the diagonals. Don't forget, future peanuts, adding on the diagonals. That's 12x to the third plus 7x. I forgot to write squared there. I remember saying it, I just forgot to write it. Minus 54x plus 15. Now, what I saw, some of the mistakes that I saw, when people did this, look, 27x squared, look here, don't look away. 27x squared and negative 20x squared. People were putting, some people, 7x to the fourth. No. Whenever you add or subtract anything on the face of the earth, it's always the same kind of thing you started with. If I add shirts to shirts, I don't get socks. I get shirts. So when this says 27x squareds and I add negative 20x squareds, that gives me 7x squareds, not 7x to the fourth. When you multiply, that's when the rule is to add the exponents. So I fill each of these boxes in with multiplication. That's why the x here to the 1 times this x squared gives me x to the third. But once I get to the step where I add on the diagonals, those exponents stay the same all the way through. Okay? Any questions?
No, sir.
All right. So here's the deal. Obviously, I'm recording this right now, and I think it's a very important thing for anybody who had difficulty with what we did in class. I think it's really important that you go back and you watch a little of this video tonight. Now, literal equations is our topic for today. I'm not going to bother doing question 1. I'm going to do it because we just did a question exactly like this. Okay. Number 2, I am going to do because number 2 is a little weird and it's a little bit tricky. Did anybody see that their answer looked a little weird when they did this?
Yeah.
If you were on top of things, you would see that it was a little bit weird when you went through and did it. Oh, you know what? The bell's going to ring in just a minute. Let me get going on the lesson and we'll come back to number 2 at another point in time. What we're going to talk about today is what we call literal equations. And what it means is an equation with a whole lot of letters in it. Now, normally when we get an equation, it doesn't look like a formula. The literal equations look like formulas. This formula says the perimeter is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. This formula is solved for the perimeter. It says perimeter equals. Well, what if I want to rearrange the formula for the width? How do I make it so it says width equals? Check it out. All I'm going to do is subtract 2L from both sides. And I get P minus 2L. Now that's weird looking, but I can't combine the P's and L's, no more than I can combine A's and B's. Equals 2W, and then I divide by 2, and I get that the width is the perimeter minus twice the length divided by 2. All I want to do, listen, when it says solve for W, that means rearrange the formula so you get W by itself. We will do more of that tomorrow, but I think you have 2 questions like that on tonight's homework to play. All right, hasta la vista, bye con Dios, toodaloo, ta-ta. Arrivederci, smile a lot, ciao, arrivederci, adios amigos y amigas. Toodaloo, ta-ta. See ya.
Game and practice scheduled for today.
Agreement suspect.
No, you're talking about the first test, the retest, right? Nobody's getting theirs back for 1 more day. I have 1 more kid who's got to do theirs, and then I will give them all back. Okay?